Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and microcap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, new management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up interview to one of my favorite stories, and I think that one of the ones that will be one of the biggest successes over time. It's taken much longer than I thought it would, but that is the market in general right now for a lot of companies. I don't think it's just BEEM Global. BEEM Global CEO Desmond Wheatley, and never short of energy or enthusiasm, even when you don't seem to be getting much respect. Maybe I should call you Rodney Dangerfield, right? You're not getting much
got no respect. Yeah, I love Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah.
So you just reported some blowout numbers again. That's like how many times in a row now?
Yeah, years and years. Look, this is why I've also got energy and enthusiasm for this, because all right, you could say I'm not getting much respect for the markets, but then again, if you look at the sector, everybody's been hammered. The fact of the matter is, I'm proud of my team. I'm proud of my products. I'm proud of my company. The numbers that we just put out, I don't know if anybody else can match them. Look, that's what I'm paid to do. I'm paid to create great products and sell them to people and create great fundamentals. I can't manipulate the broader market. But you said something really excellent last time we talked, and again just a minute ago. This pendulum always swings back, and when it does, it will reward people who performed and who kept their nose to the grindstone and who produced good fundamentals, and that's what we're doing. Anybody can see that. Just look at the numbers we put out 2 days ago.
Right. So I'm still in shock that people are not giving you the credit that you deserve on what I consider to be probably one of the best acquisitions I've ever seen done. That is so synergistic with a company's mission goals. I mean, what you acquired and just the sheer the equipment, the land, the relationships that go back 30 years with 17 different nations.
in a product that you happen to have a patent for here in the US that I think is going to become one of the hottest products when it actually gets revealed and done. But I think it'll be one of the hottest products for the new EV. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are saying, oh, wow, there's, sales are slowing down. EV is not going away. If anybody thinks that EV is going away, you're on crack. It's not going away, right? It may be slow, but it's still growing if I'm not wrong. Desmond, you know better than I do.
I'll give you the numbers.
Okay, let's hear them.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you if anyone has any faith in what they're reading out of the media anymore, this will cure you. So because if you read, and I read the Wall Street Journal every day, I read the Economist every week. I don't watch television, so I've spared myself that agony. But I do read an awful lot, and even in respectable publications now, you'd think that the bottom had dropped out of the EV market. You'd think there was a terrible decline going on. Okay, so let me give you the numbers. 50% year-over-year growth last year. Forecast for over 30% year-over-year growth this year. But remember, these percentages are on higher absolute numbers, right? So the absolute numbers are much greater. But so the forecast for this year, 30%. But let me tell you what happened in the first 2 months of 2024. 70% year-over-year growth. Ford, who's one of the companies often cited, oh my God, Ford's backing down on EVs and they're shutting plants and all that sort of stuff. They announced over 80% year-over-year growth of EVs in the first quarter of 2024. This is a funny kind of decline. Nothing but double-digit growth across the board, across the globe, in the United States and Europe and everywhere else like that, and yet the media is pacing it as though it's a decline. Okay, fair enough. The thing is, as you know better than anybody, Jim, if you want to know, do the research, look at the numbers, don't look at opinions and headlines. It's because it's laughable. As I say, even quality publications putting out headlines that make it seem as though there's a decline. Well, there's just kind of decline I love. Fantastic growth.
All right. So going back to the acquisition, the skill set that company has, the management team that was there, the team that's there is impressive. The engineering team, the equipment that you have, that it is going to enable you, and you stated it in your last call. How much have you saved on the production of the EV ARC already?
Well, so at the end of last year, we'd already pulled about $4,000 of cost off the BOM, improving the product, by the way, but with another probably $8,000 in there that we know where we're after. So that gives us about $12,000 saving on a $65,000 product. In Europe, one piece of the EV ARC product that I highlighted, which is the ballast and traction pad. If you can see me, it's the thing that the vehicle's sitting on. That one's the dumbest and smartest part of the invention. It's what allows us to deploy these things without any construction and without any site preparation. It's really heavy. It's curved, so it's got this structural element to it, and it's keeping this great sail up in the air from flying away. Remember, we're rated for 160-mile-an-hour winds and flood-proof to 9.5 feet. So it's a really robust thing. Well, this plate is one of the most expensive pieces of the whole product, and it's actually very difficult to put the curve in it. It's technically, you need big machines and everything else. Now, in the United States, we outsource that process. We have to send it to another company. So we buy the plate, we do some stuff to it, then it goes in a truck, it goes somewhere else, the person has the really big machine, they put the curve in it, they send it back to us. You can imagine the money moving around, very, very heavy and everything else, right? Putting the curve in it. Then we send it somewhere else and it gets sandblasted and painted in the United States. In the factory in Europe, which we own the land, we own the buildings, we own all the machines, we have the capabilities to put the curve in the plate. We're already doing it today. We have the capabilities to sandblast it, automated sandblasting process, and we have the capabilities to paint it. The impact of that is that the plate, one of the most expensive parts of the product, costs us half as much in Europe as it costs us in the United States to produce. Half as much. We're talking about thousands of dollars of savings on a single component. So yes, Europe, if I can. Largest market in the world for our product. 405 million cars, versus 319 million in China, second largest, versus 290 million in the United States, third largest. By the way, don't confuse Europe with the EU. People often make this mistake. They Google it and they get EU. Remember, Europe's bigger than the EU. There's lots of countries like Serbia where we're operating which are not in the EU. So, largest market in the world for our products. We have acquired a company there who has for the last 30 years been making steel structures with electronics integrated into them. That's what our products are. Yes, they don't have our IP and they didn't have our know-how. They do now. That's why they're making our products. But they had all the skill sets and they're even better equipped than we are in the United States to make the product. And then, as you also pointed out, during the last 30 years, they have developed relationships and sold profitably and successfully into 17 different nations to customers who have exactly the same profile as those customers with whom we're having great success selling our products to the United States. So I'm talking about cities, counties, state, federal governments. I'm talking about large corporations. I'm talking about militaries and that sort of profile. The same people have been buying product from them. Now we're just going back to existing customers, many of whom we already have contracts with, and saying, hey, listen, you've been buying these things from us for 30 years. We have a great relationship, a lot of credibility. We now have these renewably energized EV charging products and energy security and battery storage products. Are you interested in learning more? Well, there's never been a better time to have that conversation in Europe, and we're having it. And look at what we did. It took us 5 years to get $1 million contract in the United States of America.
Bring that up. Yeah.
Yep. It took us less than 5 months to get $1 million contract in Europe. And who's it with? It's with the British Ministry of Defence. We're putting these things into British overseas bases, not because I'm British, by the way. It's got nothing to do with it. I'm Scottish. I'm from the best part, but it's got nothing to do with that. It was not one of my relationships. All of my family was in the military. My cousin in the military, but that was nothing to do with it. It was just purely on the fact that they need a solution like this, and we're the only company in the world that produces it. And we are producing the first of those now in our Serbian facilities, and they will be shipped in the first half of this year to that customer. From nothing to 100 miles an hour in a short number of months. Plus, and if you have chance, watch the video of the walkthrough that we did at that facility. It's on our website. You'll see that within 6 weeks of buying the thing, it was completely rebranded to BEEM. And you will see the enormity of it and the gravity of it. And no one's watched that video and come away thinking anything other than, wow, that's fantastic that we have that over there. And we own all of it.
And I encourage, I'm one of those guys that watched the whole thing. I watched it when you were doing it. And I was like, what is it? Six acres? 6 acres.
250,000 square feet under roof. Contrasted that with what I have here. I have 50,000 square feet under roof here and 30,000 square feet under roof in Chicago. But I'm paying leases on these, and it's not cheap, right? Over there, I'm not paying any lease payments or anything else. I own that land. And I can't resist just telling you one other amusing little anecdote about this, except there's nothing funny about it at all. It's excellent economics. At the moment, our factory is in a place called Kraljevo. To get to our factory, you drive from Belgrade, for example. It's a 2-hour drive. You drive for an hour down the most beautiful freeways you've ever seen in your life. I mean, I'm talking about way better quality than we have here. Made by Americans, paid for with European Union money, right? Bechtel. Beautiful quality freeways. But then, to get to our factory, you have to get off the freeway and you spend another hour on surface streets to get to the factory. Obviously, that's logistically a pain in the ass, okay? Well, do you know what? In the first quarter of next year, there will be an off-ramp from the freeway, which is being extended within 500 meters of our factory. Just the real estate transaction alone, when you buy a piece of industrial real estate and you have to drive an hour across surface streets to get to it, and then all of a sudden there's a freeway off-ramp 500 meters from it, that the value of the increase to the land on its own would be, I would have done it just for that.
And I was going to bring that up too. I mean, if you think about the impact of that, I mean, and how much you spent to acquire this company, and the benefits that you get from acquiring that company, I mean, I feel like you stole it. That's how I feel. I don't know.
I paid 10 million euros for that company. I had the land and the buildings independently appraised during due diligence. 7 million independently appraised, not our numbers. A licensed independent appraiser, and I wasn't trying to make it seem like a big number or anything like that. I had the equipment and the machinery appraised for another $6 million, again by a licensed appraiser. So 6 plus 7 equals 13, I think. We paid 10 million for the whole business, 30 years of relationships, the backlog, the contracts, the know-how, the engineers, everything else. Yeah.
Right?
I know. I listen. And the thing is, it'd be one thing if we'd just done that and then nothing had happened. But the fact is, we've already sold, and we are making product in that facility now. It is magnificent, and not just our existing product. Don't forget, the other big reason I bought them is because we're now the 4th largest streetlight manufacturer in Europe. And as you know, since 2019, I've had a product called the EV Standard, patented but not produced. You correctly pointed out we've had that patent in the United States for a while. Well, I just got a patent for it in Europe. And so we're now patented in Europe for the same product. And this is a product which is based on a streetlight, but it has a windmill generating electricity, it has a tracking solar array, just like this thing. The solar array is following the sun as it moves across the sky. And then the pole of the streetlight's full of our proprietary battery technology that we got as a result of the acquisition I made 2 years ago. And then we're putting an EV charger on that. So this thing will work with or without the grid. It will save a fortune in terms of utility bills, but most importantly, it allows us to put EV charging on the curb without having to dig trenches, get easements, figure out owns the nearest electricity or anything else like that. It's a game changer. Plus, it's beautiful. And the thing is, I 4 years ago I got a patent on that thing, and people have been correctly having a go at me. Yeah, you've had this thing patented for so long, it seems like a really promising product. Why don't you make it? Well, the truth is, we have a lot of expertise around energy storage, renewable energy, batteries, EV charging, and stuff like that. We're really good at making this thing, but we don't know anything about making streetlights in this side of BEEM. Now we have BEEM Europe, arguably some of the top experts in the world around engineering and manufacturing lamp standards. Well, 3 weeks ago I was in our factory in Craiova, and I touched the actual structural elements of the first EV standards there. So 4 years of very little activity developing a thing, and then within the first couple of months of owning this company, we're already making the first components of it. And in the first half, maybe squeezing into the beginning of the second half of this year, you'll see the first of those stood up, and we will be walking past all of our customers, both in Europe and in the United States. We're making some for Europe and some for the United States as examples, and we're going to be walking past cities and corporations and mall owners and everybody else and saying, hey, look at this thing. Solves all of these problems for you, and it looks beautiful. How many do you want?
So, we talked about this last time. Regardless of what people think about what they're reading from that the EV is slowing down, 2035 is the date for Europe, right? That's where they are supposed to be going 100% EV, right?
Zero emissions vehicles. You will not be able to buy diesel or gasoline vehicle in Europe after 2035. And we should expand on this a little bit because there's some other very interesting things. But finish your point. I want to come back to this though, because some other things I want people thinking about.
Well, I'm just thinking. We said this last time. The window is only going to get shorter, right? So that means that infrastructure that needs to be built, it just gets more and more intense as you get closer to that 2035 date.
Urgency is great for us. We love urgency because we're the fastest by far. Nobody can touch us in speed to deploy. The EV standard will be the same thing. But yeah, urgency is really great for us. But I want to talk to you about that 2035 thing because there's a couple other interesting things have happened since you and I last talked.
Okay.
First of all, I was in Washington, D.C. Just before I went to Serbia. So let's say 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was in D.C. Spent a week there. A couple of years ago, I couldn't get a junior staffer to call me. Now I'm meeting with senators and congressmen and the White House. Tim, I can't resist telling you this. I cannot resist telling you this. In 1984, I stepped off a ship in a U.S. port in a pair of Levi's and a white T-shirt, and there was no money in my pockets. 1984. I just had a meeting at the White House. If that isn't an American story, I don't know what is. I mean, God bless America. I love this country, right? It's an incredible story. But here's what was interesting about that. I've actually authored a bill called the Strategic Electric Reserve, because we have a terrible vulnerability in this country. The grid is a terrible, terrible vulnerability, and we know how to solve that. And so we're trying to get, at the end of the day, it's not going to work if there's not an awful lot of pressure from government and everybody else to make it happen, but we know how to solve it. And so we've authored a bill, and that's why I'm in Washington, because I'm talking to senators and congressmen, because we need them to sponsor it and get behind it. And believe me, this is not a sap the taxpayer bill. This is take money that we were already going to spend, putting it into vulnerable infrastructure, and instead spend it on infrastructure that's invulnerable to centralized failure. Because the Russians have hacked our grid, the Chinese have hacked our grid, the Iranians have hacked our grid, and God knows local people have taken down regions of it as well. We have a way of solving that, but with the same money that's going to be spent anyway, adding capacity, just doing it in a much more resilient way. So while I was there, I was meeting with Democratic and Republican senators. What's really cool about this is it's very popular on both sides of the aisle, because this is not about tree hugging. It's not about solar. It's not about windmills. It's not about anything. It's about making resilient infrastructure, making it in America, and having it be absolutely invulnerable to the centralized failures of the grid. That's basically what this thing is, right? You've got to knock out every single one of these things if you want to knock the power out from these things. It's not like knocking out a power station or a transformer or something. You can shut down a whole neighborhood. You have to hit every one of them. So anyway, while I'm there, I was talking to a Republican senator, very, very anti-EV guy. And he's telling me, no way in hell will more than 75% of the population buy EVs. There'll always be 25% that don't want them. And I said to him, do you know what? I'm not even going to argue that point with you, because I don't know. I think EVs are great. I drive a pickup truck that does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. The only thing that's faster than that's my motorcycle. It's also electric. I think consumers are going to love them. But I take your point. Everybody's got their own thing. But I said, Senator, let me put it to you like this. When we have 75% penetration of electric vehicles, who will own a gas station? Who will own a spare parts store? Who will own a facility where you can repair internal combustion engine vehicles? Who will go to school to learn how to fix them? Who will do any of these things? And what will end up happening is, you were right, maybe that 25% won't want to buy internal combustion engine vehicles, but they will not have anywhere to go and fuel them or repair them or anyone to sell them, because this is a free market, right? And the fact is, in the free market, the companies are going to go where the money is, and they're not going to go where the 25% is. Do you know what the best part of that is? Do you know where I learned that? I learned that from one of our customers, and that customer was the US Marine Corps. I asked the Marine Corps, tell me why you're so intent on moving to electric vehicles. And they said, because we view it as a strategic vulnerability to rely on internal combustion engine vehicles, because we think in the next couple of decades, we're not going to find people to fix them, we're not going to find spare parts for them, and we're not going to find an industry that's prepared to put fuel to get in them. And so we need to be moving to the next thing. And I was like, good Lord, genius. They have figured this out, because they spend a lot of time figuring about what's going to happen in the future. And they understood that you didn't need 100% adoption of electric vehicles. It just needs to get to the point where the tips, where it's just no longer attractive economically to invest in the infrastructure for the ICEs. That's going to happen without a shadow of a doubt. Beyond the fact that, as you pointed out, once Europe goes electric, largest market in the world, the US automotive manufacturers will not be able to profitably make internal combustion engine vehicles for this market. And for any of your listeners that are listening to this and thinking, oh my God, a dystopian world we're moving into, I'm going to miss my car and all that sort of stuff. I get it. I went to sea as an engineer. I love engines. I remember I had thousands and thousands of hours at sea before I ever went on a sailing boat. The first time I went out on a sailing boat, the thing was silent and it heeled over. And I was like, man, the lifeboats, I think we're all going to die. This thing, it's not running and it's heeling over like this. We're all dead. So I get it. I love engines too. But at the end of the day, try an electric vehicle, drive around in one. It's pretty cool. And if they're made in America, we make the best electric vehicles in the world right here. The Teslas, the Rivians, they are the finest electric vehicles in the world. It's something to be proud of and something we should really push.
I absolutely agree. You and I talked this was a long time ago. I remember when I called you and asked you if you could be a Homeland Security defense play, right? Yeah. Because it was when that oil line got taken over for ransom.
The Marathon pipeline, yeah.
And I thought, holy shit, man, what happens if somebody takes over our grid? And then you were like, well, Tim, I'm glad you're thinking this way, because I wrote an article about it. And then you sent me that article, and I was like, holy shit. I mean, yep. It was frightening what I read in that article, right?
Well, I've taken it one step further, and I've now authored a bill, and as I say, we're the great news is both sides of the aisle, because again, all we're saying is, listen, you don't need to bomb this country in submission. You just turn the power off for a few weeks even. We cannot allow that to happen. And here's the thing that's really cool about this. As I said, we know the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians have been in our grid. What I find most alarming about it is they didn't do anything while they were in there. They're just probing around. And I know enough about tactics to know that what that means. That means that's looking for an opportunity that you use at a later date when it suits you. That's even more alarming to me than if they did something. But what I've been explaining in DC is, if we build a strategic electric reserve, remember, we have a strategic petroleum reserve already. Yep. That's to defend us against the lack of oil. I'm saying we need a strategic electric reserve to make sure that in the event that we have a failure, we've got something to fall back on. Well, you know what's interesting about that? The minute we do that, that juicy target is no longer juicy. Because if you're the Chinese, the Russians, or the Iranians, and you're saying, sure, we can knock out the grid, but they have an SER, and it won't bring them to their knees. In fact, it's just going to awaken the sleeping giant. Everything will, the police will still run, water facilities will still run, healthcare will still run, communications will still run, because they've got this damned SER thing, and it's impossible to take it out. That all of a sudden makes the grid a less juicy target, and so it's less likely that we'll ever have a problem with the grid.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so I'm just thinking about an EMP, right? An EMP, but the thing about the grid is that you've got these big. I guess you take out one big grid and you take out cities, right? I mean, that's essentially
there are thousands of substations across the United States of America. There are 9 specific substations. If you take out all 9 of them at the same time, it turns the whole country black. And by the way, this is not me saying this. I'm not some whacked out, doomsday sayer. This is just federal data. That's all it is. They did the study, not me.
Right.
And so we're going to harden the grid and we're going to do all. Yes, and we should. That's exactly the right thing to do. But the problem is centralized infrastructure. And you just made the point. The problem is, no matter how hard you make it, there's a power station here and there's a big wire going over here where you need it. If you take the wire out, then nothing downstream gets any electricity anymore. Nothing downstream gets any electricity anymore. If you take the power station out, then nothing anywhere from there gets it. If you take the substations out, then nothing downstream. And that's the problem with the way it's built and construed. Now, it needs to stay. I'm not saying replace it, but we need a layer on top of that of lots and lots of micro generation and storage everywhere. And the great thing is it's easy to build. It's inexpensive. You don't need to go through years of NIMBYism and permitting and all that sort of stuff. And it makes sure police, healthcare, water, food, cooling, those medical and all that keeps running while we bring the central grid back up again.
All right, let me touch on. I'm going to try and figure out what maybe it is Wall Street is concerned about. So
let me know, please.
Are they worried about how are you on cash? I mean, if anybody needs to go to the capital markets, then a lot of these deals that are being announced are absolutely horrendous, right? I mean, so maybe there's a concern that you need to raise capital. Is that something that you feel you need to do?
I'm going to give you some numbers.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, because the world is full of liars and snake oil salesmen and all that sort of stuff, go and look at our filings and check. Okay. Because that's not me, but no one listening to this knows that.
Right.
Go and check them. So I'm going to give you some numbers. First thing you're going to do is you're going to find out that last year we burned about $10 million of cash, $2.5 million a quarter.
Okay.
Very, very lean burn. Okay. So that's bad, right? Because that's money out. That's not money in. We started this year with over $10 million in cash, but importantly, we had $23 million of working capital. Let me define that. Working capital, cash plus inventory plus work in progress plus prepayments, vendor prepayments. All of those 3 things that I just named to you, inventory, work in progress, and vendor prepayments. Oh, and AR, accounts receivable. Those 4 things that I just named to you, we convert all of those to cash, typically within 90 days. There's a few outliers here and there, but the big numbers we convert to cash within 90 days. So that basically means I got about 23 million of cash or stuff that's so like cash, it doesn't matter that it's not cash, right? AR, I'm invoiced somebody, I get paid in 30 days, right? Take the 10 million or the 2.5 million a quarter that I burned and divide that into 23. And what you get is 9.5, close to 10 quarters, not months, of runway just on the existing cash that we have right now if we produce no gross profit. Okay, so keep that. So that's 10 quarters. Keep that in your mind. And then, again, from our filings, what you will find is that we GAAP gross profit 1.2 million, but that included $1 million of non-cash expenses, so that not impacts. And that means what that means is the actual gross profit we produced was over 2 million. GAAP requires us to subtract out various non-cash things like amortization of intangible assets and things like that. It's not cash though. It impacts the GAAP thing, but it's not cash. So you got 2 million of gross there, right? That was last year. Now this year, I've already outlined savings and a price increase on the product, which if we had no growth this year at all, remember last year we did 300% year-over-year growth. The year before that was 200%. The year before that was 150%. But if we did zero growth this year, no contribution from Europe, nothing at all. We just did the same amount of stuff that we did this year with the gross margin improvements that we've already announced and the price increase, which is the same as a gross margin improvement, has the same impact. We would produce over 11 million of gross profits, 10 million of burn this year, okay? But I've got 10 quarters, which is not a year, it's 2.5 years of available cash and things that are just like cash, okay? So when you put all of that together, what that can tell you is the reason that our auditors didn't force a going concern on us, and for those of people who are not familiar with what that term means, the auditors will tell us to put a going concern on our filings if they believe that we have insufficient cash to pay our bills for the next 12 months. We do not have a going concern on our filings. So our auditors clearly think that we're not running out of money, but also the arithmetic that I just gave you is very simple, and again, very easy for anybody to look in our filings to see. Okay, so your question is, why does Wall Street not like you? And it's not that they don't like me, because as you could see from the charts I sent you earlier, our stock's doing better than anybody else in the sector. But the sector is not doing well. But you're right to say that sometimes people will just pull up a balance sheet and they look at the first line, which is cash, and they don't read the second line, which is AR, and they don't read the next line, which is WIP and inventory and stuff like that, right? They just look at cash. So he's got 10 million in cash. So we're worried about him, right? But the numbers I just gave you are correct and factual. And again, don't take my word for it. It would take about 5 minutes to go through our filings. Our filings are very easy to read because we're a simple and deliberately simple and easy and well-organized company. It'll take about 5 minutes to go through them and to find out if I'm a liar or not. I know you're going to find out I'm not a liar.
You know, I can tell you, Desmond, you know, if I even had a hint that you were one of those snake oil salesmen or a liar, or we wouldn't be talking. And we have been talking for a lot of years. So has it always been an easy road? No. I mean, there have been times when, you know, you've always said what you were going to do. It just doesn't happen as sometimes in the time frame that you want it to happen, right?
That's right.
But
thank you for pointing out. Thank you for pointing out that. Well, that is true. It often doesn't happen as quickly as I want it to happen. I'm a very impatient person. I have high expectations. But thank you for also pointing out that if you look back over 10 years of the public statements I've made about this company, 10 years of presentations about this that I made about this company, we have done everything that I said we would do. We have not changed our story. We haven't come up with some new oh, well, we failed on that, so now we're doing this. This is what I remember. I'm an investor too, and I do M&A, and I have this thing that I call strategic realignment to cover up for tactical failure. Okay, this is companies who they tell, I'm going to do this great thing. It doesn't work, and then they say, but Tim, now I'm going to do this great thing. Oh, but then I'm going to do this great. And what they're doing is they're just strategically realigning to cover up all their tactical failures. You will not find a hint of that anywhere in our history. It's just blood, sweat, and tears. And yes, it takes longer than I want it to, but we've always done everything that we said we were going to do, and the numbers prove it.
Right, and with the Serbia with the Serbia plant and the efficiencies that I think you're going to gain, but not only that, but being able to bring the EV ARC over to Europe now with a group that has, you know, already has a sales pipeline for you, has relationships there, and that's why you went and got your first $1 million order in the first 5 months, right? Yep. I mean, yep. 5 years, 5 months.
Yeah.
That if that doesn't give you just a little glimpse of how tremendous the growth could be in Europe in a very short period of time, you're
The largest
not,
market in the world. The largest market. And there's something else I want to say to you, and I want to be a little bit careful about this because it's very important not to seem as though I want to exploit this situation. But I'm going to say to you, and I hope I don't sound foolishly optimistic when I say this, but I hope that the good guys are going to win in Ukraine. And I hope it's not going to take forever to happen. And when it does happen, there's going to be a massive rebuilding effort there. And I can tell you, they're not going to invest a lot of money in gas stations and 100-year-old technology. What always happens after, you look at what happened to Germany and Japan after the Second World War, they came back with everything was all brand new, right? Rebuilt from the ashes, okay? And look where they went. There'll be a rebuilding effort there. Now, Kiev in Ukraine is closer to my factory in Craiova than Denver is to my factory in San Diego. Okay, so I have no evidence at all to suggest that I or BEEM will benefit in any way from the rebuilding of Ukraine. None. And I'm not telling you that we will. But I am telling you this, we will be there. We will be there presenting our rapidly deployed electrical infrastructure products. We will be there presenting our rapidly deployed EV charging infrastructure products. We will be there presenting our street lights and our other street furniture products manufactured in the region with a shorter drive than San Diego to Denver. You bet you will be there doing that. And I think, I'm an optimist. You have to be when you do it's a combination of paranoia and optimism, which equips you to do what I do for a living, right? I'm an optimist, but I think we have a bloody good chance of winning a great deal of that when it happens, as long as the right guys win. And I sincerely hope they do. Don't forget, I'm European. I know how close we got to things going wrong when the wrong guys might have won.
Right. And I'm hopeful for that outcome as well. But even if that outcome does not happen,
no, we still got the biggest market.
You have a massive opportunity in front of you, right?
Yep.
Because they're going electric regardless, which means those street posts that have charging units on them are going to become critical. I just think about the fact that we're still building gas stations today, right? I mean, we are.
I'm not. And I'm sorry not investing in it.
But we are, because why? Because the infrastructure is still growing, right? So think about that for a minute. How long have we had gas and gas stations?
Yep.
And we're still building them. So electric has a long ways to catch up. I mean, a long ways to catch up. And then I start thinking about apartment buildings and condo, they don't have garages. Where do they charge? If they have
average US household owns 2.3 vehicles. I can tell you that even the people who don't live in apartments and condominiums and stuff like that, even people who live in single-family residences, those single-family residences have insufficient electrical circuit to charge one electric vehicle in many cases, far less the other 1.3. So this idea that everyone's going to charge at home sounds great if you say it quickly enough, but it's not borne out in any way by the physical infrastructure that's out there. But that's okay. No one has a gas station in their home either. People have got used to refueling elsewhere. It's just that in the future, it's going to be a hell of a lot more efficient for them because they're going to refuel it when they're waiting at the store. They're going to refuel at the office. They're going to refuel at school or at the park or wherever else like that. They won't have to go somewhere special like they do today, a gas station, and hang around while they refuel. They'll refuel where they were already going. And that's how it's going to be, just like Wi-Fi, basically, right? I think Wi-Fi is an excellent proxy for the way charging infrastructure is going to go. Many years ago, you and I are old enough to remember when it was really difficult to connect to Wi-Fi. You had to have a special thing, and it was expensive, and you had to sign up, and there was only a few places that had it. Now, everywhere you go, it's free or so close to free that it doesn't matter. Your device pretty much connects automatically and everything else. I'm telling you, that's how EV charging will be. Everywhere where your listeners are going, they will find there's already charging there. And did you see we just got a patent on our wireless EV arc?
The just charging without having to plug in, right?
You don't even have to plug in. You don't even have to plug in. So if you look at this blue car here, basically the owner of it would just pull onto that thing and walk away, and it fills up with fuel. And they didn't plug in, they didn't do anything. You tell me that. And then people say to me, I don't want to own an EV because it's inconvenient. Huh?
Exactly.
You clearly don't know what you're talking about, because if you did, you'd know. I mean, I'll tell you something interestingly enough, I had to rent, because I travel for business a lot, as you know, I had to rent a car. And usually nowadays I'm able to rent an electric car, and I always do, obviously, because I'm flying the flag and everything else, But the other day I had to rent a car. They didn't have any electric cars, and I found myself, two things happened to me. I was in stop and go traffic. Well, when you're in an EV, you find that being in stop and go traffic is a completely different experience, right? Because the engine's not running, it's not getting hot, there's no vibrations, you're not, you don't have gears and all this sort of shit. None of that's going on, right? With an EV, you're just sitting there, nothing's happening at all. When the car in front of you moves, you just touch the thing, it goes immediately and it stops immediately. You never use the brakes because the regen stops you, puts power back in the batteries, and you find that you don't lose any range at all in stop and go traffic. You never lose any range at all. It's fantastic, right? Okay, so I'm in this rental car and I get stop and go traffic, and I was like, good God almighty, what a steaming pile of shit this thing is. I can't believe I'm driving this. It is, and it wasn't a bad one. It was just I got so used to how easy EVs are, and now I'm in this thing. And then the other thing that happened to me was I had to fuel it. I had to go to a gas station. I cannot tell you how many years it's been since I've been to a gas station, and I cannot tell you how horrible it was to have to do it, because I've just got so used to my vehicle being full all the time. Just crazy, So again, for those people who are listening who are thinking, I don't want this guy ramming EVs down my throat. I won't need to. You'll find it so much more efficient. It's so much easier. It's so much more fun to drive. But beyond that, as I say, when we start doing wireless charging, you don't even need to plug the damn thing in anymore. You walk away from it, and we have a patent on that, just granted this year.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a big deal, right? Because it does take complexity out of it. I mean, you just pull up on something, you park it, you go do your business. Your car is charging while you're doing your thing. You get in your car, you drive away, and hopefully you've got some more fuel in the tank. That's pretty cool.
You do. Probably as much fuel as you lost getting to the place. I mean, that's usually about the way it works. I think I've told you before, average dwell time in a US supermarket is 47 minutes. At least it was a couple of years ago. That statistic might be slightly out of date. I don't know if it's 43 or 49 or what. But anyway, 47 minutes a couple of years ago. In 47 minutes on this thing here, you would get half of the average daily range replenishment in the United States of America. So half of the average miles that a US sedan drives in 47 minutes on this thing. Just go to the store. And I may have told you this before, but it's one of my funniest stories, I think, anyway. I was talking to a banker in Wall Street. He's a drill baby drill guy. He's mad at me, but he owns our stock because he's not mad enough not to be greedy. God bless him. Anyway, he said to me, "Are you telling me that I've got to go to the store to fuel my vehicle in the future?" And I said, "Do you go to the store anyway?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, then no, I'm not telling you have to go there to fuel your vehicle. I'm just saying while you're there, you could fuel it if you wanted to. I mean, you may as well. What the hell, right? I mean, it's got to be better than going to a gas station, right?" It was funny how his mind went to, it's like somehow that I was putting a burden on him, when in fact what I was showing him was he could make his life a whole lot easier and a lot more efficient and more comfortable,
Yeah. I sometimes don't understand how people have such a big disconnect, but look,
they'll get there. They will get there for sure.
We'll get there, and I believe, Desmond, that at some point, like we said at the beginning of this, the pendulum has swung way to one side, and this is an exciting company that, I was telling you before we hopped on that I got involved in investing 35 years ago to make money for myself. That was what it was all about. And then
not a bad motivation, by the way.
As I progressed, it was like, you know what? I want to help other people learn how to become better investors instead of having retail investors be the joke of Wall Street. Because the one thing that I can say for sure is there is strength in numbers. So if you have a lot of smart retail investors that understand that things take longer than you expect they're going to take, not to get emotional when things aren't working the way they should be or you feel they should be. They have to understand that Wall Street is not emotional. They are playing the emotions of retail investors, right?
I see it every day.
And if the retail investors could become more like the Wall Street guys and have a plan and a strategy and conviction in the stuff that they own, and recognize that putting out press releases just to put out a press release is not a panacea for fixing the stock. That's not how it works, right? executing the strategy that's going to get the company to the vision that you have, right? And that takes time. So you have to be, if you've ever owned a business, started a business, you will understand that this is not just something you make happen overnight, right? So that was my goal, was to try and make retail investors. But really what I've come to realize, maybe it's because I'm getting older and I'm thinking, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. But what really matters the most is you come into this world with nothing. I'm going to leave with nothing. I can promise you, I'm not taking all my stuff with me. It's going to stay here. So what matters most is what you do with that time that you're here. What impact can you have, right? And what better impact could you have than supporting a company that is going to make the world a better place, safer place, more environmentally friendly, right? Leave your mark that way. Support a company, and if that company then turns out to be $1 billion company down the road, how many lives do you actually impact by supporting that company, right? I mean, the people that get hired, the jobs that are created, the efficiencies of having a non-grid tied electrical, I mean, as you said earlier, a defense system for America, right? It is an emergency system. These are things that you should care about if you care about the country, and then you think about the impact that that company could have on humanity is great, and that's what you want to support, right? I mean, that's what investing really should be all about. Is what? Yes, you can get extremely wealthy, but you're also helping solve a need. It's not a want, it's an absolute need. And BEEM hits those, I mean, on every level. That is what
I believe it does, deliberately. Right. We care about security of energy. We care. I do care about the environment too. I've got kids. I do care about it. Look, I'm not a tree hugger. I'm a markets-driven guy. I want to make money. I want my investors to make money too. But I'll tell you what, it's fantastic to do that while also defending these other things that are important. This is a national security thing. Having secure energy. Look, we're not living in a world like we were years ago, where you could do without electricity. I forget what it is. It's something like 39% of all electricity consumed in California goes to moving water around. It used to be, I used to say to people all the time, it used to be you need air, food, and water to survive, right? And in California, you don't even need shelter. But in most places, you need air, food, water, and shelter. Now you need air, food, and water, and electricity, because without electricity, there's no food and water.
Right.
That's a fact. Anybody just talk to people who know what they're talking about and ask if our food supply and our water supply can survive without electricity. The answer is no. Today, impossible, right? So it's a strategic imperative. Our foes know that. A few crackpots domestically know it too. So it's a very important thing to do. So you're right. We have set this company up to enrich our shareholders, to benefit our employees. Tim, when I first talked to you, I think we probably had less than 50 employees. We're now 370 employees, and all of them highly skilled and well-trained people. You think of all their kids and everything else too. But yeah, enrich our shareholders, give our employees a good quality of life and a great opportunity to do something, and then help with the national security and the energy security of this nation, while also doing something that's environmentally sound. I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
You are. So listen, maybe I'm speaking from conversations that I've had with other investors. The issue for them, because I try to understand why people don't see this as good of a story as I see it, and so getting the profitability is like the big one for everybody, really. When do we get to profitability? When can you show that you're actually making a good profit?
I just gave you the numbers earlier that tell you when we get to cash flow. And honestly, as an investor, cash flow, it should be the most important thing. Profitability, don't forget, profitability can include all sorts of non-cash things and everything else like that. Profitability, a company doesn't survive or not survive based on profitability. It survives or doesn't survive based on cash. And I showed you how we can get to cash flow earlier. Profitability that's a much easier lift after cash flow. Cash flow is the key metric, the key dynamic, which is why people spend so much time talking about EBITDA, right?
Right.
But cash is king. I'm a Scottish guy, right? Cash is important, right? So I showed you how we can get there. I think we're going to be very, very profitable. And I also don't think, again, don't take my word for it. I think if you look at our filings and look at our growth and look at the numbers that I just gave you and do the arithmetic that I just walked you through, you will see the path to profitability. And then beyond that, very, very profitable. Because we have a shitload of operating leverage. This is one of the things that we were really able to demonstrate in 2023 above all other things. From the same facilities with essentially the same headcount and the same overhead costs, we increased our sales by 300% year over year. Okay, think about that for a second. That's operating leverage. Didn't need to go out and buy a new building. Didn't need to go out and do anything at all. Basically, 300% year over year growth from the same facility, and that's why our operating expenses were something like 64% lower as a percentage of revenues this year than they were last year, because we just scaled the hell out of the business without having to spend a lot more money. And that's operating leverage, and operating leverage ultimately is what gets you to profitability, and operating leverage is what gets you to very profitable, right? Because you just keep adding more and more stuff, but you don't need to keep adding more and more, rationally adding more and more expense.
Right. So you've got the EV standard, which you said would be maybe the second half.
Yeah, early second half.
Early second half. Okay. I can't wait to see that thing.
I know. I've seen it.
And touched it from what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
cool.
that is
cool.
Exciting. Do you have an anticipated range of the margins that could be on that product? I mean, that's
not going to say a word about that today. Not going to say a word about that today.
You can't blame me for trying, man. Okay.
No, I can't blame you for trying.
All right, listen. You feel like we've covered everything? You feel like there's anything missing?
I mean, look, I know very well that you and I could talk all night about this, but I think the salient points have been shared. And again, I would just say that to you and to everybody else that's listening. Well, first of all, thanks for your support. But also, if you do have other questions, just get in touch with us. If you've got doubts, get in touch with us. I'll tell you this. You've asked me what people don't like right now. I think that people are just scared, right? The interest rate environment, the rotation out of growth stocks, everybody's taking a hammering, and that makes people scared. But so I will just say this to you: if you're scared, or you've got unknowns, or you're concerned, or you're wondering if really I'm full of shit or whatever, just ask us. If you really want to know if I'm full of shit, why don't you just come to our factory? You know, I mean, obviously we can't shut the place down every 5 minutes while everybody walks through it and everything like that. But we've got nothing to hide. We have real facilities. We make real products. You know, we've got nothing. We are a very simple company. Just come and ask us if you're worried about us. And if you think we're the same as somebody else, if you say, oh, all those EV stocks suck or whatever else like that, actually ask us. Find out how we really are. You know, a lot of companies lose money every time a product leaves the factory, right? It costs them more to make the product than it does than they're selling it for. Not us, right? A lot of companies don't have any protection over their products. They don't have any IP or no patents. Not us. You know, a lot of companies are very ill-disciplined about the way they spend cash or use equity. Not us. Right, and you can see that if you doubt it, don't worry and say I'm not sure if this guy's telling me the truth or anything like that. Just ask us, read our filings, come and see us if you want to or whatever else. And what you're going to find out is that what I'm telling you is the truth, and that we are everything that I say that we are and more. Actually, I'm very proud of the team.
Is AllCell? We haven't really touched on that, but how is AllCell performing up to your expectations when you did the acquisition there?
Look, there would be no EV Standard if we hadn't bought that company. We wouldn't be reducing the costs on the EV ARC the way we had. Most of the cost reductions have come from battery improvements, We wouldn't be putting. I think we just announced recently we've got a major automotive interest in us right now. It's coming through the battery part side of the business. Can't name them. They won't let us. That happens a lot. By the way, that's another quick thing I just want to tell you is people get really frustrated when we put press releases out saying something like a major automotive, and I get angry calls. Why don't you name them? Why don't you name them? I'll tell you why I don't name them. Because they asked me not to. A lot of them are in R&D processes. A lot of them don't want their competitors to know what they're doing and all that sort of stuff, and they ask us not to. So ask yourself as a shareholder, is it more important to you that you know which major automotive it is, and then I anger this huge customer that we can never, ever do business with again? By the way, not just them, but anyone in their sector, because once they find out that we talk, they won't do business with us. Or is it better that you just don't know who they are? Okay, please, if we could tell you, we would. We're not trying to keep secrets. We're just, what we're doing is we're guarding
our investors really need to understand. Look, that I guarantee you, Desmond wants to tell the whole world more than anything. It's probably killing him not to be able to tell you who the customers are, because why? It's validation for his product. It's a feather in the cap. Of course he wants to, but are you going to risk losing that business and piss the customer off? No. So you have to understand that. That's what some customers do not want things told, and you have to respect that. That's their right. So, but the good news is that those signings are happening, right? I mean, that's the positive thing. They're happening.
And again, the numbers tell a story. The numbers tell a story, you know. And then the last thing I'll say to you about that is just for people if they've got concerns, we are actually a well-run company. And again, you don't need to take my word for that. You can find this in our filings by how simple our filings are. We don't do crazy whack job financings and toxic this or anything else like that. You can also figure that out by here's a good thing, a little study point for you to look at. Look at our overhead, and then look at what we do. Look at what we get done with the overhead that we have, right? Because what you're going to and compare us to others. What you're going to find is that with a very much lower overhead, which translates into things like less shares outstanding and low use of cash and all that sort of stuff, you look at, and then you can look at the top line performance. There's either two things going on here. Either we're just dumb lucky and have been for year after year after year, or we're actually operating a lean machine and we're well run. And I honestly, the only conclusion that you can come to is that we're well run. And you know, by the way, I'm not patting myself on the back for this. I've got a fantastic team of people. I just hired a COO. The guy is a machine. You know, efficiency and all that sort of stuff. I've got a great CFO, got a great accounting team. It's a well-run company, and we're very well run in Europe. Obviously, they bootstrapped that business up. By the way, the European company that I bought, accretive, no debt. They didn't even have customer credit accounts. They did everything out of cash. But 30 years, okay, everything out of cash. They run by an engineer, same background that I have. He's now my general manager of BEEM Europe. Fantastic, very, very talented guy. I think you'll probably get what I'm talking about when I say this to you. He keeps constantly surprising me because I will tell him something and I don't need to repeat it ever. And when I do, you know, he's Slavic, right? And he's like, Desmond, you told me this last week. And I'm like, I know I did, but I'm just so used to having to repeat myself. I'm so used to having to tell people to do the same thing over and over again. It's not him. It's like talking to the Terminator, you know?
Let me ask you a question. This is going to be kind of off the wall, but artificial intelligence,
yes,
or deep machine learning, with all of your units out there, is there? I mean, as that grows, is that something that actually could be implemented into your products?
Can we save this for a later call?
Huh?
Can we save this for a later call?
Yeah, we can.
I'm just going to say this and nothing else about that. We are putting infrastructure over cities all over the United States and all over Europe. What do you think that infrastructure would be like if it was sensor rich and it knew where everybody was? Okay.
Yep, got it. All right, we'll save this conversation for another day. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had Desmond Wheatley from BEEM Global Inc.
ticker symbol BEEM. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button. How about giving us a like? While you're at it, why not give us a share? All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.